Pelé, how a poor boy became football's greatest legend of all time. 1950, Brazil had just lost the World Cup final, and across the country, millions of hearts were broken. Among the devastated fans was a young boy sitting beside his father. As tears rolled down his father's face, the 9-year-old looked up and made a promise that sounded impossible. "Don't cry, Dad. One day, I'll win the World Cup for Brazil." His father smiled. To him, it was just the innocent words of a child trying to comfort him. But that little boy would grow up to become the greatest football legend the world has ever seen. His name was Pelé. Or at least, that's what the world would come to call him, because Pelé wasn't even his real name. In fact, it started as an insult. Long before the stadiums, the trophies, and the worldwide fame, Edson Arantes do Nascimento was just another poor boy growing up in Brazil. His family had almost nothing. After school, he would shine shoes on the streets to help his parents earn enough money to survive. Some days there wasn't enough food. Some days there wasn't enough hope. But there was always football. The problem? They couldn't afford a real ball. So Pelé and his friends made one from old socks and rags. The dusty roads became their stadiums. The alleys became their training grounds. Every empty space became a football pitch. And it was there, barefoot and free, that Pelé learned the style that would later amaze the world. Ginga, a football style full of rhythm, creativity, and joy. To the boys, it wasn't a tactic, it was life itself. But not everyone supported his dream, especially his mother. She wanted him to stay away from football. She had already seen what the game had done to his father. Pelé's father, Dondinho, had once been a talented footballer himself, but a terrible knee injury ended his career. His club abandoned him. His dreams disappeared, and now he cleaned hospitals just to feed his family. Pelé's mother feared the same fate awaited her son, so she pushed him toward school and away from football. But destiny had other plans. One day, while helping his mother at a wealthy family's house, Pelé overheard some rich boys talking about football. Excited, he joined the conversation. But when he accidentally mispronounced the name of a goalkeeper, the boys burst into laughter. Did he just say Pelé? From that moment on, they mocked him with the nickname, Pelé. The poor boy didn't know it then, but the name meant to humiliate him would one day become immortal. Soon after, Pelé found a newspaper advertisement for a youth football tournament. The rich kids were entering, so he decided that he and his friends would enter too. They had no boots, no uniforms, no money, but they had talent. At first, they struggled badly. After years of playing with a homemade ball, a real football felt completely different. They couldn't control it. They missed passes. They misjudged every touch. But gradually, their street football instincts took over. They began to play with freedom, with imagination, with Ginga. Round after round, they kept winning, until they reached the final. And waiting for them were the same rich boys who had mocked Pelé. The rich kids laughed at their bare feet. They called them the shoeless ones. Embarrassed, Pelé and his friends decided they needed football boots. But where could poor boys find money? Desperate, they sold peanuts on the streets and somehow scraped together enough money for a few old second-hand boots. Then came the final. Everything went wrong. The boots were too heavy, too uncomfortable. They couldn't move. Within minutes, they were losing badly. 6-0. The crowd laughed. The rich boys mocked them. And then something inside Pelé snapped. He took off his boots, threw them away, closed his eyes, and imagined he was back on the dusty streets where he first learned football. When he opened his eyes again, he was free. He began to dance with the ball, dribbling, spinning, gliding past defenders. His teammates followed. They removed their boots too. Suddenly, the impossible happened. They came back. 6-1, 6-2, 6-3. 6-4, 6-5. When the final whistle blew, they had lost by only one goal. But the crowd didn't care. Everyone stood and applauded. They chanted one name, Pelé. Among the spectators was a scout from Santos FC, and what he saw changed football history forever. But the happiest day of Pelé's life quickly became one of the saddest. After the match, a terrible accident took the life of one of his closest friends. Pelé blamed himself. If they had never tried to buy football boots, if they had never entered the tournament, maybe his friend would still be alive. The guilt destroyed him. He promised his mother that he would never play football again. And for a long time, he kept that promise. He helped his father work. He studied. He tried to forget football. But the joy disappeared from his face. His father noticed. One day, he picked a mango from a tree and challenged his son to kick it into a trash can. Then another, and another. Slowly, Pelé smiled again. Football had returned. Every day, father and son practiced with mangoes, controlling them, juggling them, shooting them. And with every passing year, Pelé became better, stronger, sharper. Eventually, even his mother could see it. Football wasn't just a hobby, it was his destiny. So she made a decision that changed everything. She called the Santos scout. Years after first discovering him, the scout returned. This time, Pelé's mother finally said yes. At just 16 years old, carrying the hopes of his entire family, Pelé left home to chase his dream. Life at Santos wasn't easy. The coaches hated his style. They believed European football was superior. They wanted discipline, structure, order, not tricks, not flair, not Ginga. Pelé tried to change. Night after night, he forced himself to play differently. But the more he tried, the worse he became. He was suddenly the weakest player on the team. Eventually, he packed his bags. He wanted to go home. Then, the old scout found him, and he told him something that would change his life forever. Ginga wasn't just football. It was history. It was culture. It was the spirit of Brazil itself. You can spend your life pretending to be someone else, the scout said, or you can embrace who you really are. Those words hit Pelé like lightning. He returned to training, and this time, he played like himself. The real Pelé. The boy from the streets. The boy with the sock ball. The boy with Ginga in his soul. Suddenly, everything clicked. He became unstoppable. Goals came one after another. The youth player became a professional. The professional became a superstar. And before long, Brazil came calling. At just 16 years old, Pelé was selected for the national team. The World Cup awaited. The World Cup in Sweden was unlike anything Pelé had ever experienced. The crowds were huge, the pressure was enormous, and after suffering an injury, many believed he wasn't ready. But injuries to other players opened the door. Suddenly, the teenager had his chance. At first, he looked overwhelmed. The European defenders were bigger, stronger, more experienced. But then something changed. He remembered his father, he remembered his promise, and he remembered who he truly was. A Brazilian, a player of Ginga. Against France, he exploded. 3 goals, the youngest hat-trick in World Cup history. Brazil reached the final. Their opponents were Sweden, the hosts, the favorites. When Sweden scored first, Brazil looked defeated. But Pelé refused to give up. The promise he made as a child echoed inside his mind. I'll win a World Cup for Brazil. Then Brazil began to play, not with fear, not with doubt, but with joy, with freedom, with Ginga. The world watched in amazement. Brazil won 5-2. At only 17 years old, Pelé became the youngest World Cup winner in history. But this was only the beginning. He would go on to win 3 World Cups, a feat no other player has ever achieved. He scored more than 1,200 goals, became a global icon, and inspired generations of footballers. Some say Pelé didn't simply play football. They say he became football itself, because he proved that the game could be more than winning. It could be art. It could be hope. And sometimes, it could even make the world forget its conflicts. The poor boy who once chased a ball made from socks changed football forever. And his message still lives on today. Never be ashamed of who you are. Play your own game, and never stop dancing to your own Ginga. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the Football Vault, and turn on notifications so you never miss another insane football story from the Football Vault. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.